Good morning. Thanks for joining me in the next 25, 30, 50 minutes. Thank you, David, for this kind introduction. The only thing that David didn't tell you about me is that I'm Swiss. Many people think I'm American, but I'm not. I just was there as a student, picked up a Midwestern accent, but I'm Swiss. And I know all of you know at least one other Swiss. He just lost yesterday, but normally he spends or wants to spend 2 full weeks in Melbourne every year. If he has to go home after 1 week, it's not very good. He makes about $50 to $60 million a year. That's about as much as I made during my whole career. And he is a small and medium business entrepreneur. He is, according to Rod Laver, the best tennis player history ever had. Roger Federer, of course, I'm talking about. And he's a good friend of mine. But he does not have one experience that I have, and that's why I'm here. He's never worked in a large organization. He's never been in a big corporate transformation, and that's why I'm happy you invited me and not Roger. The theme of Amplify 2013 is Shift Happened, Transformation Required. And I'm going to put some question marks behind that theme. Actually, I'm even having enough courage to change the theme at the end of my speech if I get there. And why am I doing this? Because I'm going to talk to you about transformation and change. And my first question is, why change? This thing already includes why you do it. It's a command from above. Somebody says, shift happened, transformation required. I say, why change? And then maybe when is the right time to change? And then the most important question, and probably the hardest answer, is how to change. And I want to put some light behind those questions. My good friend, Rosabeth Moss-Cantor, she is a Harvard Business School professor. And I spent 2 years with her after my retirement from IBM, becoming a senior of Advanced Leadership Initiative in Harvard. She designed this wheel. It's a wheel because it moves. It has 10 spikes, and in each spike, you can see a step that is necessary if you want to have systemic transformation of anything, any organization or anything that you want to do. And as I said, Rosabeth used the wheel because she wanted to show the motion. And if the wheel goes around one thing, she calls it a revolution. And she says you can start at any place in that spike. If you want to be a change manager and understand change management, download her article. Not right now. Download her article and read it. It's good. Question is, why? Well, in 1993, when Lou Gerstner joined the IBM company, there was no question about why. We had just had the biggest loss in corporate history of America. In 1992, it was minus 5 billion. In 1993, it was minus 8 billion. So actually, the answer for Gerstner 20 years ago to start the transformation was pretty clear. There's no way to go on. And in that sense, it was not difficult for Lou Gerstner to start that transformation. He actually inherited a company that his predecessors were, excuse me, I went too far? No. He actually got a company his predecessors were trying to call them small elephants because they were trying to sell a lot of pieces and put pieces out and cut the whole IBM company into pieces, and that didn't succeed. And what Gerstner did when he came in, and it's all described in this book, and by the way, I can't resist of saying this. Yesterday I was talking to clients of AMP Capital, and while I was giving this speech, apparently one of the clients downloaded on iBook this book, because when I was finished, he came with his iPad and said, see, I've already got the book. I want to read it. This is technology. When Gerstner did this, we did not have internet yet, so it was a different time. But he Came into IBM, and the first thing he did for the first 90 days, he didn't talk to management, he talked to clients. Think about this. He was an outsider, he came into, the first thing he did, he talked for 90 days to lots of clients of IBM around the world, trying to find out what is wrong with this company. Now, if you want to read this history, it's the history of the most famous, at least today, large turnaround of a large corporation. I suggest you do that because I'm not going to follow this book now. I'll use a different method. One of my friends, Linda Samford, she is the Senior Vice President of Enterprise Transformation in IBM, reporting to the CEO. She has the same role as David has in AMP here. She took a little different approach. She calls it the road to a smarter enterprise. And I'm going to follow that, trying to explain to you with my experience back of 35 years of IBM, but also with my experience in SwissRE, ABB and Metal at Toledo, how can you have a successful transformation? What is needed? And I'm going to try to tell you not only the good stuff, but also the bad stuff and the ugly stuff, because it's not going to be an easy roadmap. The first thing you need to do is mobilize. You have to mobilize people. Gerstner invited 400 top managers in February '94 to Westchester. He showed two charts, and spoke an hour. One chart was the IBM market share over the last 10 years. The curve went from your side down here. And the second chart was customer satisfaction, and the chart of IBM compared to competitors, same thing. And the message was, guys, it's an unsustainable business model. Then he did something quite dramatic in my view, because I had never seen something like this. He said, now we're going to have a break, 45 minutes. You go out, have a coffee, talk to each other, and talk to yourself. And if you come back after 45 minutes, you are committed, together with me, to change that trend. But you're free not to come back. Nothing will happen to you, you won't get fired, but I do know that you're not committed. Now, I don't remember how many guys didn't come back in from those 400. I went back in, obviously, because I thought it was almost impossible not to do that, right? It was fear. But it was impressive that somebody took a risk to 400 people that he didn't know, because he was quite new, and said, either guys, you're with me or you're not with me. In fact, it even came worse. 2 months later, he came to Switzerland, and I was the CEO of IBM in Switzerland. Have any one of you ever been in Zurich, except for you? Zurich, largest city. IBM's headquarters in Switzerland was right at the lake. Not quite a spectacular view as here, but we saw the harbor, or the sailing harbor right in front of us. We saw them snowed-in mountains back there. A building like an insurance company. Pictures hanging around, large boardroom, large office. He walked into it. After 30 seconds, he said, "Who owns this building?" And I said, I was looking to the CFO first, actually, hoping that he would give him an answer, but that guy was looking down and didn't say anything. So I said proudly, I think IBM does. He said, "Who in IBM?" I said, "Well, IBM Switzerland." Then he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, but not anymore, 6 weeks from now." I was totally shocked, because I knew that my predecessors who had built this building were so proud of this, and this IBM. Anyway, the visit, next evening or the same evening, we had clients with us, and he talked to those clients, Swiss clients, and they all were quite complimentary about IBM and so forth, which was good for me. I mean, I felt very proud. The next day we had a town hall meeting with about 1,000 of my colleagues. We were about 2,500 people then in IBM Switzerland. And he told them in what kind of dire state he is finding this company. And all my 2,000 people were walking out of the room like this, right? Took him to the airport, and I will never forget the three things that he told me at the airport. I will never forget it. The first thing, he looked at me and said, "Did you hear what I said yesterday about the building?" And I said, "Yes, I did hear." "Are you going to call me when you've sold it?" I thought, it's not only mobilizing, it's using fear, huh? I said, okay, yeah. Then he said, "Listen, I heard the clients, they were quite complimentary about IBM, and congratulations, you're doing a good job with your people, but remember, you're only 1.5% of the IBM Corporation. And the other 89.5% is doing dramatically worse than you are doing." Okay. Then the last thing he said is, "By the way, your days are counted here." That was my first real encounter with this new CEO of the corporation. I went home to my wife and I said, not only are my first options that I received the year before totally underwater, but I'm going to lose them because I think he's going to fire me in the next few weeks anyway. Before I go on, just want to tell, I did sell the building, and you know who bought it? An insurance company. Only people who had money at that time. It was a lousy kind of market, but I had to sell it because I knew this was an order, right? Or take it or leave it. I only found out later on that IBM was at the verge of becoming illiquid. And he needed those 60 or 70 million bucks, which I was creating within 6 weeks to pay salaries for IBM. It was that bad, but I didn't know that, because IBM Switzerland was doing relatively well. And obviously also my days were counted, because about 6 months later they took me out of the country and gave me another job, but we'll come to that later. Now, talking about a movement, 10 years after Lou Gerstner started, 2004, his successor, Sam Palmisano, took over. And Sam had a much more difficult job because IBM was doing relatively well again. And he didn't know what to do, how he knew that he had to do something, but how to create that movement, how to keep the speed of change in the company. And he did something, I think, extremely important. He decided that IBM needed to decide. He saw a bifurcation of the market, and he was thinking about, where do we go? Do we go in the direction of commodities, because the IT market was commoditizing itself, or do we go in the direction of value add? And you know from history, he started to sell everything which was commodity, disks to Hitachi. The final stage was selling the PC company. Everybody thought IBM was a PC company and never had more than 8% of our share anyway, to Lenovo. And on the other side, we bought PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting in order to get into the value space. But how can I mobilize the people? Because with some M&A transactions, you don't mobilize the people. So I had a brilliant idea. I thought it was really, Sam had two brilliant ideas, I think. One was, rather than bringing down the principles that Lou Gerstner had brought down, and Lou Gerstner, having been a consultant of McKinsey, gave us 8 principles, which was actually the goal that you need, because you do need, according to Rosabeth, you do need a goal. People need to know where to go. And Sam had this fantastic idea of saying, rather than us managers or me writing down what is now the new direction of IBM, why don't we ask people? At that time, we already had technology. There were 320,000 IBMers, most of them attached to the intranet. And he was saying, well, let's make a values jam. Let's try to find out, what will people say? IBMers say what IBM should be all about. And this was the largest jam ever, actually, in history. 75,000 people in IBM took the opportunity during 72 hours to chat with each other and create a new value system. And this is what they did. I know you cannot read it back there, and I'm not planning to spend a lot of time on it because I don't have that time, but it was a dramatic way to start a new movement in IBM. Read the first one. It says dedication to every client's success. If you think about this just 30 seconds, what that means and what it could mean in turning around your mind of what is really success, if you define your success, the client's success. If you've been growing up like me for 25 years in a company before that was successful when we pulled the customer across the table because he signed a contract, when we came home with new contracts and celebrated, that was success. The quarter end was success. But is the quarter end success of IBM congruent with the success of those clients who have trusted you and gave you money? In most cases, probably not. This created a dramatic change. Actually, Sam was even smart enough, he did something else. 12 months later, he made the same jam. 150,000 people were participating, and he was asking the question from 1 to 10, how close are we as an institution, to living up to these values? And that, ladies and gentlemen, created practically the workload for another 10 years of transformation in the company for him and the CEO, Ginni Rometty, right now. Because the outcome of that was horrible. It was horrible. I mean, people started to trust the machinery, they started to trust the technology, they started to express their opinions, and they were quite frank and said, we don't live up in any way to any of this. But as I said, it started hundreds and thousands of projects, of ideas, of innovative ideas. What do we need to do in the company in order to live up to these values? And the company actually is still working on it. The second thing then you need to do, once you got the movement done and you have set the objective, is you're going to have to manage this process. I don't think it's possible in an organization, certainly not in the size of IBM, with today has again 440,000 people, to let the people do what they would like to do, even if they have an objective, but it's uncoordinated. You cannot do this. So you do need someone who is going to manage it. You do need someone who makes sure that management is not walking away, the leaders are not walking away, thinking that this is normal business now, the guys will move, I don't have to worry about it, I go back to my old stuff. You have to make sure that they have the skin in the game and continue to do that right. And therefore, it does take a governance system in order to run the whole process. The next thing then I think you need to do is to start using facts and figures. You cannot drive a transformation purely emotionally and with passion. You need to convince people with facts and figures. Sam built one of the most impressive metrics systems in the company. We had a metrics for everything in order to be able to understand, are we moving forward? Are we there? How far do we have to go? I'm giving you two examples of this, of two other companies. In ABB, new CEO 5 years ago, coming in from GE, was used to NPS. That's the Net Promoter Score methodology of how you were going to find out how customers were satisfied with what you did. When ABB did this for the first time, they had done a lot of customer satisfaction surveys, but they never really understood what was the outcome. With NPS and consolidating the results, they found out within 2 or 3 months, because it takes a wave to get those results back, that they do have a systemic issue of being considered by their clients of not delivering in time. On-time delivery was the biggest problem that they had. I can tell you, it changed the complete agenda, the strategic agenda of investments, allocation of resources, how are we doing it, the strategic agenda of building business processes to make sure that you were going to be able to keep the commitment that you gave to the customer to deliver, up to the boardroom. It started a transformation by itself, by a simple metrics of using NPS. Very similar in SwissRE. They asked me about 3 years ago, can you help us with a project that we call client centricity? And I said, yes, I can help you. What's the problem? Well, the problem is we don't know how much time and how much valuable time our sales force spends with clients. And then I said, well, let's measure it. We started to measure it by simply asking that every call that a salesman from reinsurance division made with a client, he was going to make a short report. This was not done in that company because, as you may know, reinsurers were sitting back in the office waiting until the prime insurer was making a session. They never saw the customer actually, right? Well, when we had that metric, we found out that their salesmen, whom they thought were out with prime insurers and actually even some individual customers, spent the time in the office doing administrative work, never saw the customer. It's a metrics, but it will start. It started a complete transformation of the sales force and of the marketing go-to-market structure of that company. They're still working on it, and I'm still working with them as a board member, but it does change. Now, unless you have those facts and figures and metrics, it's very hard to drive a transformation. The next one is business processes. If ever you want, and I'm talking about large organizations, if ever you want to transform a large organization, you can only do that if you have a business process system that is absolutely engineered state-of-the-art. When Gerstner came into the IBM, he determined 12 processes: finance, HR, IT, procurement, real estate, and he said those processes are owned by me. These are all corporate processes. We do procurement the same way in any of the 174 countries that IBM is operating. It was a shock for us because we were grown up country by country. Everybody had its own system. Nothing was congruent. And he said, forget this all. We'll build a new business process-oriented business. And he gave one process per one of his reportees. He had 12 reportees, pretty flat organization, and said each one of you is going to not only run your business or be a leader of HR, you're now going to be an owner, global owner of the process. You redesign it, you make it simple, you roll it out, you maintain it, you support it, you pay for it, you measure it, you do this and this and this. Was a dramatic change of the way that people thought when they thought someone in the back office is worrying about processes and not me as a business person, frontline. Now, the thing is, these business processes need to be simple. And when you redesign them, when you do them, they have a tendency to make them overly complex. And I have to tell you today, in today's world, in a much more volatile world than we are, in a world that Sam called the globally integrated enterprise, work goes where work is done best. We don't care about national borders, anything. It just flows throughout the company. You have to make sure that these processes are really state-of-the-art, and they have to be simple. Processes have to be simple. Next one, and it's almost the last one, is that you need to invest in transformative innovation. And I know we were talking upstairs about big data and everything that is available today. Remember when Gerstner came, no internet, no email. He could not communicate through email. So the world is much, much easier for today for a CEO if he has to do a transformation. But when it comes to using modern technology, state-of-the-art technology, like you guys are using right here for giving a message out to your people, which I think is fantastic, and I compliment AMP on this, I would warn you by saying, in my experience, new technology does not yet create a transformation, nor does it fix flawed processes. It will not. It can help and accelerate to do what we need to do, but it doesn't fix it. IBM is running the largest private cloud, another one of those buzzwords today. collecting data and information from over 100 warehouses, which are all connected using very, very intelligent analytical tools. And they call it the Blue Insight Cloud. But in spite of all that, I would warn and say, tackle reinvention first, and then apply technology. Start with the right questions, because at the end of the day, the flood of data is wonderful to have, and the access is wonderful to have. But if you don't know what question you want to ask that data, you will not transform yourself. Last but not least, I think if you want to be successful in a transformation, you need to embody creative leadership. New leadership. I think the leadership form that I was used to 20 years ago when we started with this transformation in IBM, actually it's 25 years ago because I'm already retired for 20 years. The competencies that people had to have changed. Lou Gerstner established 11 competencies in IBM. It started with customer insight. That was the first competency. Every IBMer had to qualify himself, self-assessment, and the boss was doing it every year against these 11 competencies. And I think that was a good thing to do, but I need to tell you, even that has to be transformed. And while they keep those 11 competencies, they were adding more competencies. For instance, social computing skills. I heard that a couple of months ago from Ginny Rometty that she asked about 100 young IBMers to become the coaches for top executives to tell them what they should do with Twitter and with Facebook, or what they should not do with Twitter and Facebook, and how they could use those tools favorably for the company and for the transformation. I thought it was a great idea, and I'm going to use the same idea in my other companies. Recently, the communication executive of ABB came into the boardroom, and she told us how she was using Facebook, and she said to the board, there were 8 international guys there, but I'm the only one who is relatively astute in IT and is using Facebook. She was telling us how she was recruiting around the world communication people, and she said, I haven't hired any one of the 20 that I hired in the last 6 months any other way than through Facebook. My colleagues were all moving around. Someone even said, what is Facebook? By the way, they all have their material, 500 pages usually for every board meeting, on their iPad. It's downloaded automatically, and we don't carry around any paper anymore. And obviously during some of the more boring presentations, you can see that they're all doing their email below the thing. IBM added 4 more competencies, which I think I want to share with you. The first one is broader and deeper thinking of systems and patterns. Second one is ability to handle uncertainty with optimism and enthusiasm. The next one is more openness to a multitude of cultural differences. And the last one is meaningful collaboration and a spirit of restless reinvention. And ladies and gentlemen, if I learned something in those 35 years, it's that spirit at every level of management, every level of leadership. If you don't wake up in the morning and you want to reinvent something, it's very hard to have a good transformation in a large corporation. And it's independent, whether it's ABB, IBM, SwissRE, Meta Toledo, or even Harvard, where I spent 2 years. Change, transformation, is hard work, but I am sure it can be achieved if you do use the right methodology and the right methods, and if you have the right leadership. The most difficult thing to change, ladies and gentlemen, though, is culture. And Gerstner said that in his book. And I was always thinking, what does he mean by culture? What actually is culture? I'm sure there's a good definition for it, but my definition is culture is how we individually and collectively think, how we act, how we behave. And my conclusion is it's all up to us. And if culture is us, then it's up to us to change that culture. And that's why I'm suggesting we change this. First, I don't think shift happened. I think shift happens while I speak, and I will shut up right away. And I think, rather than being afraid of change, because we do all not like the change, let's face it. Instead of being afraid of change, let's make transformation an inspiring experience. Thank you.